I'm Bert with the PBIS Applications Training Team. I want to welcome you to the next in our series of videos about the graphs available in the SWIS Equity Report. In this video, we'll look at the Students with Outcomes by Group graph. This is the first of two composition graphs available in the Equity Report. It compares a student group's percentage of the total school enrollment with their percentage of just the students who have the selected outcomes. Teams analyzing this graph look to answer the question, is this group's percentage of all the students who received an outcome equal or reasonably proportionate to that same group's percentage of the total school enrollment? Let's take a look at this example so it's a little easier to see what we're talking about. Within the graph, we're looking at two bars for each student group, a green one and a blue one. The green bar represents the group's percentage of the total school enrollment. We see in the data table, our school's total enrollment is 504 students. Above that, we see each subgroup's portion of that enrollment. And in this column, we see that portion as a percentage of the total school enrollment. For example, there are 100 students identified as Hispanic Latinx. When we divide the 100 by the 504 total enrolled students, we see students identified as Hispanic Latinx comprise about 19.84% of the enrolled students. SWIS does that calculation for every student subgroup and rounds that percentage off. So on the graph, we can see that SWIS rounded that 19.84% to 20%. Or we could say that students identified as Hispanic Latinx make up about 20% of our total enrollment. We can also see that 60% of the total enrollment identifies as white, 13% identify as black, and so on. So with the green bar, we are talking about the group's percentage of the total school enrollment. The second bar, the blue one, represents a subgroup's percentage of just the students who received at least one outcome. In this example, the outcome we selected was all referrals. Doesn't matter how many major or minor referrals a student received. If they received any referrals during the school year, they are counted only once in that group of students who have received a referral. Here's how SWIS calculates those numbers. When we open the data table, we can see that there are 190 students who received at least one referral. 101 of these students identified as white. 39 identify as Hispanic Latinx. 46 identify as black. To come up with the percentages for the blue bar, SWIS takes the number of students in the subgroup who received a referral and divides it by the total number of students in the school who have a referral. In this example, 190. Here we see all of the students who received at least one referral. About 53% of them identify as white, 21% identify as Hispanic Latinx, and 24% identify as black. The important thing we want to think about, though, or that critical question to reflect upon is a subgroup over or underrepresented when considering just the students who have already received a referral? In a perfect world, we would expect these two bars to be fairly even, proportionate, or equal. But looking at our graph, we see that for two of our three largest subgroups, we don't have that hoped-for proportionality. It looks like when I'm talking about the students who identify as white, there is significant underrepresentation. We see that 60% of our total population identifies as white, but only 53% of the students who have received a referral identify as white. When I look at the population of students who identify as black, I see something altogether different, and that something doesn't seem to make sense. I know that of the total students in the building, 13% identify as black, but when we consider just those students who have received a referral, I find that 24% of that group identify as Black. So I don't have that proportionate match. This significant overrepresentation is a red flag and something that our team should look at more closely. The next step in that process will be to identify each group's portion of all the referrals written at the school. We can find that in Equity Report Graph number 5, Outcomes by Group.